ago.
Okay, it's back on.
Attack, basically, of any kind.
And I could probably reduce it so it's not so hot.
In the history of Las
How's
Vegas
that?
and Mandalay Bay. So we pray for all of the victims. Moment of silence. All right, shall we continue? I want to introduce.
But every single time they do this, they have problems and challenges.
And our national anthem, Jesse Law.
Okay. No worries.
Thank you, Wade. You all stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance. Join with me. I pledge allegiance.
Yes. Yes, correct. Republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, justice for all.
Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what
It's a good
so
rendition.
proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam, whose broad stripes and the bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming. And the rocket reckoned the bombs bursting in air, keep proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Fabulous. Thank you, Jesse. Fabulous. USA. So a couple things. I want to get a couple points out of the way, and I want to talk to you a little bit about Vivek Ramaswamy. So first of all, you all know we have a caucus coming up in February, and you've got to be a registered Republican to participate in the caucus. And we care about the caucus, not the primary. You get that, right? The caucus is what matters, not the primary. The county GOP and Vivek Ramaswamy's campaign have a table here for caucus info and voter registration. So please make sure that you see them in the back and you're registered Republican and you're ready to participate. So let me tell you a little bit about me and Vivek Ramaswamy. And by the way, it is Vivek, which rhymes with cake. That's how you remember it. It's Vivek that rhymes with cake. Vivek Ramaswamy. So I've got this long history with President Trump. And I was with him from the moment he came down the escalator in 2015. I'm a Trump guy. I'll always be a Trump guy. Michael McDonald will always be a Trump guy. So what are the two of us doing here today? I've had Vivek on my show twice in the last 2 months. I had him when nobody really knew he was running. No one knew the name. No one knew what he stood for. And I had heard a couple of his speeches. It was before the first Republican debate, about a month before it. And I said, I like this guy a lot. Matter of fact, I think I love this guy. His views are fantastic. He is America first. He is like another MAGA candidate. He's respectful of President Trump, unlike the other also-rans on the stage who treat Trump horrible, forgetting all the great things Trump did for us. By the way, let's have a little hand for the guy who did so much for America. And Vivek is the only candidate who acknowledges what Trump has done for America. And I'm in touch with Trump a lot, and I write a lot of columns that all wind up on his desk. And I said, if you win this thing, when you win this thing, Vivek would make a fantastic vice president of the United States and president in waiting
I don't think
in
he wants to be
2028.
vice president,
And the
though.
next day, Trump went on TV.
It's
and
nice
asked
for you
him,
to bring that
and he said,
up,
"I like
but
Vivek," and I would consider him for vice president of the United States. I felt like I had a nice little hand in that. Vivek is fantastic, and I think he's an ace in the hole for us because there's no other Republican candidate that could bring in young voters and minority voters and female voters and super intellectual, college-educated people who often look down their nose at Republicans. This guy is Yale. This guy is Harvard. This guy is brilliant. This guy's articulate. This guy is this is what I said the first time he was on my show. I believe Vivek is the future of the Republican Party in the United States of America.
I hope he is.
So it just so happens that this past Monday, we booked, I have Andrew Paul here, who's my executive producer. Andrew, say hi to everybody, please. Runs all my shows, all my TV, all my radio. And you know my big hit now is on Real America's Voice TV network, America's Top 10 Countdown. And we booked Vivek as the guest for the show, which was yesterday at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. here. And it runs 5 times a weekend on Real America Voice, biggest hit of the weekend. And it was the second time Vivek has come on the show. And then on Wednesday, Charles Munoz, who runs his campaign here in Nevada, said, Wayne, he called me and said, Wayne, would you be the MC of the event? And I said, I'd love to. I am a huge fan of Vivek, and I think he's the future of the Republican Party. And I think that if President Trump wins the nomination, and I do believe he will win the nomination, but nonetheless, if he wins it, I think Vivek would be the key as vice president to bringing in huge numbers of young people in the United States of America, because he is so beautiful and eloquent in the way he describes our views, our issues, and what's happening to this country. I'll bet you everyone in this room agrees with me that this is not normal. Our country is being destroyed, purposely destroyed. And there's really only 3 people that acknowledge this on a regular basis in public: Wayne Root, Donald Trump, and Vivek Ramaswamy. That this is not a mistake. This isn't the incompetence of an old man with diapers named Joe Biden. This is a purposeful destruction of the United States of America by the people who are the handlers of Joe Biden, who are the puppeteers of the puppet. Our country is being destroyed. It's being taken down with such speed that I'm not even sure we'll be here by 2024. If we are, that's our last shot to be what we are and what we have been in all of our lifetimes. The greatest nation in world history ever blessed by God. If we're gonna win, there's 2 people I believe it's about, and it's Donald J. Trump and it's Vivek Ramaswamy. So without further ado, my man, Vivek Ramaswamy!
Good to see you guys. Good to be today. First time today. So our first time in the state, you guys are kicking us off here, and we're not stopping until we're done. Let's give a round of applause for my main man, Wayne. So great job, there he is. So Wayne and I, we've had a friendly relationship. The only thing we disagree on is the position I'm running for in this race. I'm not running to be your vice president. I'm running to be the president of the United States.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you why.
Yeah, no interested in
All right, we're going to, been to those other states. We got warmed up. I'm here now.
He's had no interest in being vice president.
We're not going to waste time on the political BS, the introductions, or anything else. I'm going to get right into it. We are at war in this country. And you can't win a war unless you first know that you're in one. It's not a war between black and white. It's not a war between man and woman or gay and straight, as the media would teach you to believe. It's not even a war between Democrat and Republican, not really. It's deeper than that. It is a war between those of us in this country who believe in the founding ideals of the American Revolution. Those of us who believe that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, among these life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, who believe in the American dream, that you get ahead in this country not on the color of your skin, but on the content of your character, who believes that every kid can achieve anything he ever wants with his own hard work, commitment, and dedication, who believes that each of you is free to speak your mind freely as long as I get to in return, who believes that America and our success form the backbone for the greatest nation in human history, something that we will not apologize for. A majority of people in this country who share those ideals. And then the other side of this war, those who believe in this country that your identity is based on your race, your gender, and your sexual orientation. Those who believe that if you're black, you're inherently disadvantaged, that if you're white, you're privileged, no matter your economic background or your upbringing. Those who believe that the remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination, that the remedy to present discrimination is future discrimination. It's an exact quote from Ibram Kendi. Those in this country who believe that we should have an open border in the United States, even as we have to use our own military to defend somebody else's border halfway around the world. Those who believe that we have to flog ourselves for our modern way of life and stop burning carbon in the United States, even as we shift those same carbon emissions to places like China. Those who believe, as Ayanna Pressley says, that we don't want any more black faces that don't want to be a black voice, that we don't want any more brown faces that don't want to be a brown voice, and who say that if you disagree with that view, that means you're a racist, or a xenophobe, or a homophobe, or a climate denier, creating a new culture of censorship in this country that has sacrificed our culture of free speech at the altar. Those are the two sides of this war. Meritocracy, group quotas. Free speech, censorship. American exceptionalism, and American apologism. Communism, Marxism is really what it is at its core. See, we had the Marxist war on the other side with the Soviet Union when we were in the last Cold War. Well, you know what? I see this the way Ronald Reagan did. There is no middle ground between the two sides of this war. There is no compromise between the two sides of pro-American and anti-American. Pick one. And my view is the same as Reagan's when he took on Marxism in the last century. Here's our strategy. We win, they lose. It's that simple. That's how we are moving this country forward. Now, I have some good news for you. I've traveled this country. I have been to a majority of the states in this union. Even this year, we have traveled the country, and I can tell you that the majority of us, 80% of this country easily, is on our side of this war. I have even better news for you. Half the 20% on the other side are people younger than me who never learned those ideals in the first place. We can bring them along too. That is the good news. Here's the bad news. The other side is still winning the war. And the question we have to answer is why? See, this is the part where at the beginning of this campaign, they told me, don't talk about this. You get into the details too much, you're going to lose people. Simplify it, dumb it down. No, at this point, I'm done with that. We have to see the truth for what it is. So here's what happened in this country. It's a dark and complicated story. I saw the beginning of it, how I get into my adulthood. I graduated from college in 2007. Got my first job in New York City on the eve of the 2008 financial crisis. Remember what happened then? We had bailouts using taxpayer money to bail out a bunch of big banks. By the way, under a Republican administration. I come back to the point. The story I'm about to tell you is not a story of Republicans versus Democrats. It is far deeper and far more sinister than that. What happened is under a Republican administration, President Bush, we used our money to bail out a bunch of big banks. And so what happened was, the old left stepped up and said, to hell with that, we're gonna occupy Wall Street. The Occupy Wall Street movement said we're gonna take money from those wealthy corporate fat cats and give it to poor people to help poor people. Agree or not, that's what the old left had to say. But right around that time, there was the birth of this odd new strand of the left that said, you know what, the real problem in this country isn't economic injustice. It isn't inequality. It's racism and misogyny and bigotry and climate change. So you don't know what happens. If you're Wall Street, that's a gift. Because Occupy Wall Street is a difficult pill to swallow. But the new woke stuff is actually pretty easy. You applaud diversity and inclusion. You put some token minorities on your boards. You muse about the racially disparate impact of climate change after you fly in a private jet to Davos. It's pretty good work if you can get it. But they didn't do it for free. They expected the new left to look the other way when it came to leaving their own corporate power intact. See, it's an arranged marriage. It's not just on Wall Street. I'm going to tell you more about this, but it is an arranged marriage, not of love, but of convenience. It is more like mutual prostitution. And the net result of that act was the birth of this new woke industrial complex that is far more powerful than just big government. It is a new hybrid of big government and big business in this country that together is far more powerful than either one alone. And they use that to put Occupy Wall Street up for adoption. So that worked so well for Wall Street that Silicon Valley then got in the same act. What they realized was, you might not even remember this, remember the old version of break up big tech? That used to come from the left. So what they realized is say, hey, listen up, we can play this game too. We will make that deal. We will censor hate speech and misinformation as you define it, the old left. But we won't do it for free. We effectively expect the new left to look the other way when it comes to leaving our own monopoly power intact. And again, that trade worked masterfully for both sides. Well, that's how you then get to Coca-Cola. Hey, the left used to criticize them for driving the diabetes and obesity epidemic in communities of color in the United States. Agree or not, and I hate that expression. But put that to one side. That's what they had to say. So what do they say? Okay, we're going to make proclamations that make a voting law in Georgia our main focus. Make us sound more like a super PAC than a soft drink manufacturer. But again, we're not going to do it for free. We expect the old left to look the other way when it comes to leaving our corporate power intact. That's how you get to Nike, musing about slavery 250 years ago in the United States, without doing a thing to reduce its own reliance on slave labor today to make $250 sneakers that they sell to black kids in the inner city who can't afford to buy books for school. That's how this game came to be played. But it's not just corporate America, that's just where I saw it first. Turns out you open your eyes, you see it everywhere. K through 12 education. What did we start hearing in the last couple of years? Math is racist. 2 + 2 = 4. I'm sorry, that's not racist. But you know what might be a little wrong is the fact that we shut the schools for 2 years in this country for kids in the inner cities, failing them to teach them how to do math, including in places like Las Vegas. See, that might be the real inequitable thing, but you know what? We're going to blow woke smoke to deflect accountability for the teachers' unions that were responsible for their failures. Now you go to college. We've told kids, including my generation, my peers, many of them haven't even paid off their college debts yet, coming out in 2007, told them that, hey, you get to go to a 4-year college degree, be a gender studies major in California. Somehow that's going to earn you an American dream. Those people are now drowning in college debt, but it's okay because we'll teach you about critical race theory, which is about exactly why the odds were stacked against you in the first place. Blow that woke smoke. What do you get in the U.S. military? 25 years of foreign wars that have not advanced the American interest. $3 trillion from Iraq, Republican, Iraq to Afghanistan. Tens of thousands of innocent American lives lost. No accountability for those failures. What are you going to do for General Mark Milley? Complain about white rage and systemic racism in the military. You see, that's how this game is played, because the old left used to be the ones complaining about the military, used to be complaining about the Iraq War, or about the bailouts, or about Silicon Valley, or about big tech being too big. This is the ultimate marriage of convenience between institutions that have failed us as Americans repeatedly, from Wall Street to Silicon Valley, to our US military, to K through 12 education, to college education. We have been doomed as they get in bed with the very people who once criticized them to create this new Leviathan, a merger of state power and corporate power that creates something far more powerful than Thomas Hobbes envisioned, far more powerful than our own founding fathers envisioned 250 years ago. That's the first part of how this fringe minority on one side of this war started to win this war, because the managerial class, the deep state, the swamp doesn't just exist in government. The swamp exists in every sphere of our lives. The members of that swamp married this fringe woke left to prop them up, to advance their own ends by covering up their own failures. That's the first act. And then somebody came in and turned that bilateral arranged marriage into a three-party affair. And that is the Communist Party of China. See, they understand this game far more deeply than any of us do. What China realized is, all right, if these anti-American Americans are having that much traction and success already on their own homeland, boy, we can get them to work for us. So I'll tell you, Xi Jinping, you got to listen carefully, though. If you don't have your eyes open, you miss the plot. So most Americans are sleeping the switch as this is happening right in front of our eyes. Xi Jinping is pressed on the Uyghur human rights crisis, where there are over 1 million religious minorities enslaved in concentration camps, subject to forced sterilization, communist indoctrination, and worse. What's the first thing he says? You got to listen to it carefully. He says that the United States is no better because look at Black Lives Matter. Literally what Xi Jinping, the leader of China, said. You think that's an accident? It's not. His top diplomat comes here to the Alaska summit a year or two ago, faces Tony Blinken down and tells him that China wants the U.S. to do better on human rights, and that China wants to see the U.S. stop slaughtering, that is his word, stop slaughtering Black Americans. Now this would be preposterous, this would be ridiculous if it weren't for the fact that our own companies and universities, and hell, even our own military, is lending credibility to what China is saying. Disney, 2 years ago, says he can't shoot a film in Georgia if they pass an anti-abortion law. Says it might have to leave Florida. Florida passes a sensible parental rights bill. And yet just 2.5 years ago, was filming Mulan in literally the Xinjiang province of China, ground zero of that same Uyghur human rights crisis. LeBron James will wax eloquent about systemic racism in the United States while bowing to his true Chinese overlords, throwing a general manager of the NBA under the bus for saying stand with Hong Kong. Jamie Dimon, JP Morgan Chase, Larry Fink, BlackRock, Tim Cook, and Apple, they have turned into Xi Jinping's circus monkeys. He will say jump, they will ask how high, because it comes down to the news. He's tied around their heads, it comes down to money. See, China will roll out the red carpet if you criticize the United States, but if you tell the CCP to adopt that same emissions cap over there, they're going to say, close the door on your way out. See, that's the way this game is played. They're playing us like a Chinese mandolin, but we are asleep at the switch, failing to see it. There's even a word for this in Chinese. Baizuo. Baizuo. Literally refers to progressive white people in the United States. They use it to laugh at us. Doesn't include me, but it includes most of you apparently. So looking out there. There's a word for it. They're using this to laugh at us, but undermine the United States from within. And you know what that does? That undermines our greatest asset of all. That is not our nuclear arsenal, actually. That is our moral standing on the global stage by creating a false equivalence between Chinese nihilism and American idealism. And by the way, it's not a Republican or Democrat point again. It's a bipartisan consensus in this country, back to the 1990s, saying that we were going to export Big Macs and Happy Meals, and somehow that was going to spread democracy to places like China. That we were going to use our money to get them to be more like us. What they realized is, you know what? We can use access to our market, our money to get us to be more like them, or even one step worse than that. They realized they could use our money to get us to be more like them. And it's worked. So now you know. We see a fringe minority in the United States, less really than 20%, probably less than 10% of this country, that is winning the existential war for the soul of this nation. How could that be? It's because the administrative state, the managerial class, the swamp in and outside of government, and the Communist Chinese Party use them to accomplish their own objectives. That's the truth of how we got to where we are. You don't hear other politicians talk about this. Part of the reason is they're, like me, coached not to. They don't trust you all to be able to follow the depth of the story. Most of them, truth be told, don't understand it themselves. So the question is, what do we do about it? Well, I love Ronald Reagan. I referred to him before, partly because he did what he needed to do in his era. He slashed taxes, cut government regulations. That was the right thing to focus on at the time. He ushered in an era of prosperity, whose fruits we continue to enjoy to this day. That is why he's my hero. But I'm going to remember the words of my favorite Republican of all time. That's not Ronald Reagan. Abraham Lincoln, who famously said in 1863 that the dogmas of a quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. And I say today that the dogmas of 1980 are inadequate to address the unique challenges of 2023. We need a new generation to lead us to new solutions for the moment we find ourselves in here today. And that is why I am running to be your next president. How are we going to do it? We're going to take it step by step. First step, shut down the administrative state. Cut the managerial class in that bureaucracy. If I can't be your president for more than 8 years in a row, which I think is a good thing, then neither should any of those federal bureaucrats reporting into me either. 8-year term limits for the bureaucracy instead of the civil service protections. And by the way, they told our friend Donald Trump you couldn't do it. They said they duped him, actually, is what they did. They said you can't do it because there are these civil service protections that say you can't fire people. Read the law, folks. What it says is you can't fire individual employees. That does not apply to mass layoffs. And mass layoffs are absolutely what I am bringing to the DC bureaucracy. 75% headcount reduction across the federal government. We're done with a majority of those unconstitutional federal regulations that fail the Supreme Court's test in West Virginia versus EPA. We're done with it. And you know what? When there are government agencies that should not exist, from the FBI to the IRS to the ATF to the CDC to the U.S. Department of Education, we're not just going to tinker around the edges, put a good person, Betsy DeVos, on top and say, fix it. No, we're going to get in there and shut it down. That is how you revive the integrity of a constitutional republic with 3 branches of government. Next thing we do, who's the other enemy that's used these people as their pawns, the Communist Party of China? We will declare independence from our enemy. We are done with it. That is the Declaration of Independence of the 21st century. I will lead us to American independence from China. We are done with it. That is the Declaration of Independence Thomas Jefferson would have signed if he were alive today. I will sign it as your next president. When it comes to the semiconductors that power those lights that are in my face right now, right? Or the phones in your pockets. When it comes to the pharmaceutical supply chain, 90% of our over-the-counter medicines coming from a nation that used the lab to produce those medicines, but also used a lab to unleash hell on the world with the last pandemic that killed hundreds of thousands of Americans. We're not going to rely on them. They put fentanyl into Percocet that's coming up the southern border. Why do we think they wouldn't do the same thing for the legal pharmaceutical supply chain that ends up in our medicine cabinets? Independence from the F-35s that we build here that require China to provide the engine parts required to build them. Does that make any sense? If we ever, God forbid, need them in a conflict with China, you think they're going to keep making the weapons that we need to fight them? I mean, people, let's catch up with our moment here. Doesn't make any sense. And this is what's different. It's not 1980 anymore. Because we never depended on the USSR for the shoes on our feet, or the phones in our pockets, or the medicines in our cabinet, or heck, the very military arsenal that we were supposedly going to use to fight the USSR. That's what makes this time different. I believe in leveling with you all. Well, we got to I'll bring it all back here, absolutely. Hold them accountable. I mean, the easy stuff, of course. Hold them accountable for unleashing hell on the world with the COVID-19 pandemic, using every financial lever we have available. I'll tell Xi Jinping, you're not buying land in this country. You will not donate to universities in this country. Our businesses will not expand into the Chinese market until we have fixed the problem and have them play by the same set of rules, and that means the CCP is gone. But we got to be willing to do the hard thing. We're in a codependent relationship with our enemy. That's why we're losing the civil war here at home. Codependent relationships do not end well. The only question is who ends it first. See, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to level with you on this. Will there be some small sacrifice, some small inconvenience we may have to go through to achieve this? Yes, there probably will be. Now, it's not as big as they'll tell you. The mega donor establishment, the Republican Party, hates when I talk about this part. It's not really as hard as they make it out to be. Onshore to the United States of America, places like my home state in Ohio, or Nevada, or Arizona, or other places across this country, businesses are already beginning to do it. Actually, and I'm in favor of this, if we're serious about decoupling from China, let's actually open up a little bit with Japan and South Korea and India. That's not just because, Australia too, So it's we got to get serious about this if we're actually cutting the cord from China. But will there still be some small inconvenience? There might be. But it's like my parents taught me. You can make that sacrifice. We can make that sacrifice if we know what we are sacrificing for. And that is the United States of America. And that brings me, thank you. Love that flag, thank you. I love that outfit right next to you too. It's good. I want myself one of those. It's good. Next rally in Nevada, I'm wearing the men's version of that. That's good. But that brings me to where I started. And this time I'm serious about this. I told Wayne the same thing I'll tell you all. We're America First conservatives. It's not a Trump First conservative, that's not a Vivek First conservative. It is an
That's right,
America
that's the way it
First
should be.
conservative. And the other part of winning a war, you got to know you're in a war to win one. But the question for our hour now, we don't have a lot of time left. If we don't fix this in the next 10, 20 years, I don't think we have a country left. The question for our hour is, who will lead our country? Who will be the general that leads us not just to start this war, but to win this war? Thank you. That is why I am in this race, okay? I told you, we're leveling with you. I think that there are only 3 candidates in this race who understand that we're even in a war, need to win one. That's Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, and myself. I'll be very honest about that. Narrow this down further. To win the war, you can't be captured by the mega donor class on the other side. That leaves 2 candidates. That is Donald Trump and myself. But you want to win this war, we have to take somebody who hasn't yet been wounded by it already. That will take a leader with fresh legs, leading the next generation to our future, to understand, yes, to put America first. We got to first rediscover what America is. See, my generation, here's what's going on with us. I'm 38 years old. I'm the youngest person ever to run for U.S. president as a Republican. And I will tell you what's going on with us. We are hungry for a cause. We are starved for purpose and meaning and identity. At a time in our national history when the things that used to fill that void, faith, patriotism, hard work, family, these things have disappeared. That leaves a black hole in our heart. And when you have a black hole that runs that deep, that is when the poison fills the void. It almost doesn't matter actually what the poison is. Wokeism, transgenderism, climatism, COVIDism, globalism, Zelenskyism, depression, anxiety, fentanyl, suicide. You think it's an accident that we see these at the same time? It's not. They're symptoms of a deeper void. And I say, this is our moment. It's going to take somebody from a different generation to do this, to say, we're done running from something. Now is our moment to start running to something, to our vision of what it means to be an American today. To me, it means we believe in the ideals of the American Revolution. Ideals like meritocracy and the pursuit of excellence. That you get ahead in this country, not on the color of your skin, but on the content of your character and your contributions. That is why we're ending affirmative action and race-based quotas across America as your next president. We are done with it, and it is going to cancer on our national soul. What does it mean to be an American? It means we believe in the rule of law. And I say this as the kid of legal immigrants to this country. That means your first act of entering this country cannot break the law. That is why we will use our own military to secure our own southern border in this country, and the northern border too. That is what it means to stand for the rule of law in the United States of America. Means we will stop the invasion across somebody else's border halfway around the world? No. We'll protect against the invasion on our own southern border here in the United States of America. It means we believe that the people who we elect to run the government ought to be the ones who actually run the government, not the puppets in the managerial class of the deep state that run the show today. These aren't black ideas or white ideas. These aren't Democrat ideas or Republican ideas. They are fundamentally American ideals that we fought a revolution to secure in this country. That we, the people, create a government that is accountable to us, not the other way around. That we, the people, sort out our differences through free speech and open debate, where every citizen's voice and vote counts equally. not in the back of palace halls in old world Europe, not in the back of 3 little government agency buildings in Washington, D.C., not in the back of BlackRock's corner office on Park Avenue today. No, we the people settle our differences from climate change through racial injustice through the front door. That's what it means to be an American. And the problem is in my generation, we lost the plot. We grew up, we were taught to celebrate our diversity and our differences so much that we forgot all of the ways we're really just the same as Americans. E pluribus unum means something. It means from many, one. And I'll leave you with this. You want to know how well we're doing as a country? We're not doing well now. You want to measure it? The best metric for how well the United States of America is doing. It's not the number of green pieces of paper in our bank accounts. It's important, but it's not the most important thing. It's not the number of ballots we cast every November. That's just the final act at the end of the process. It is the percentage of people who feel free to say what they actually think in public. Right now, we're doing as poorly as I've ever seen in my lifetime. The only way we're going to fix it is all of us, not just me, all of us, starting to talk openly again. And what we need to lead us forward is a leader, a commander-in-chief who will speak that truth. Speak the truth without apology, not just when it's easy, but when it is hard. That is what we're doing in this campaign. That is what we're doing tonight. Speak that truth. God is real. There are 2 genders. Fossil fuels are a requirement for human prosperity. Reverse racism is racism. An open border is not a border. Parents determine the education of their children. The nuclear family is the greatest form of governance known to mankind. Capitalism is the best system to lift us up from poverty. There are 3 branches of government, not 4. And the U.S. Constitution is the strongest and greatest guarantor of freedom in human history. That is the truth. We fight for the truth. We stand up for the truth. That is what won us the American Revolution. That is what reunited us after the Civil War. That is what won us 2 world wars and the Cold War. That is what still gives hope to the free world today. And if we can revive that dream over group identity and victimhood, then nobody in the world, not a nation, not a corporation, not a virus is going to defeat us. That's what American exceptionalism is all about. And that is what we will revive to save our great nation. God bless you. Thank you all for coming out. God bless the United States of America. USA.
God, I wish more people would wake up and realize that he is the most American first candidate that we have. And if they weren't so wrapped up in the idea of, but he's Hindu, or he reminds me of Obama because he's skinny. But my favorite from my conservative father, who I respect, is I just don't trust him. It's just my gut. What does that even mean? What is it about him that your gut is telling not to trust him? I don't understand. Well, if I'm not careful, that music they're playing is going to, get me. A, strike there from YouTube. But, you know, it's that thing that if we look here, he's not doing as well in the polls as what he was. So, let's take a look here. From the National Presidential Republican from project, this is project.538.com polls. So if you look here, zoom in on this some. I mean, don't get me wrong, y'all. Trump's gonna be the nominee. I mean, that's just kind of the way it's gonna happen. But people should be realizing that they really care about money not going to Ukraine. DeSantis should not be the one that's in second place. Should be Ramaswamy. Why Haley has managed to get as far as she had, I have no idea. Right now, Pence is in danger of not even being able to be part of the third presidential debate, and I'm gonna look up here for when that is. We can look at real quick politics as well to give you an idea. It's a little bit harder with them to find the actual breakdown. And I don't know why that is, but they've got somewhere on their website, just like they have this here. Just like they have this. All that. They have that on this website as well. It's just for some reason harder to find. And I don't know why they bury it the way that they do. But let's see. See if we can find it. Oh, here we go. That's what you have to do. So this is kind of the same issue. See, they're actually showing Haley as being ahead of him. Not by much, but just by a little bit. So, for whatever reason, the two of them are like neck and neck, and I don't understand why. I don't get it. It seems like the deciding factor in this election, for those who aren't just married to the idea of voting for Trump, it's seeming like the deciding factor is going to be how you feel about Ukraine. But everything that he has broken down about shutting down the Department of Education, shutting down the FBI, I don't know how anybody can have an issue or problem with that. And if anything, he has explained better how he wants to do it than what Trump has. So, why people can't recognize him as a valid option, it's a mystery to me. I don't get it. And the only thing that I the only thing I can come to the conclusion to is, again, what my very religious evangelical father, whom I love, I just don't trust him. It's a gut feeling I have. Where, I'm sorry, I think that if he wasn't Hindu, my dad would be loving him. But here's the thing. I'm not really sure you'd say Trump is a Christian. And we voted for him. Everyone in my family voted for him twice. So it's like, why are we getting hung up on We would not be saying that he was Obama 2.0 if he was white. We just wouldn't. We just wouldn't. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, Trump's gonna end up being the nominee. That is, if they don't get us into a position where we're not even able to vote for him. There's people that are trying to keep him off the ballot altogether. And if you try to do him as a write-in, do you really think that they're going to honor that vote, count your vote? If they decided, well, because of the whole insurrection thing, he's not allowed to be president, it's just like... I'm wondering just what some of these Republicans are thinking that they're going to do. But, be that as it may, I'm hoping that there are Republicans out there that are recognizing that they're going to need a second choice. They're going to need a second choice. But speaking of having a second choice, you know, there's been talk that some people are not, you know, really married to the idea of having Biden on the ticket. And I don't know who Representative Dean Phillips is, but according to CNN, Democratic Rep. Dean Phillips of Minnesota is leaving his position. In House Democratic leadership over his party support of President Joe Biden's 2024 re-election bid. My convictions relative to the 2024 presidential race are incongruent with the majority of my caucus, and I felt it appropriate to step aside from elected leadership, Phillips said in a statement Sunday. I celebrate leader Hakeem Jeffries for his remarkable and principled leadership, and his gratitude to my outstanding friends and colleagues for having created space and a place for my perspective, added Phillips. I've been a co-chair of the House Democratic Policy and Communications Committee. I'll continue to abide by my convictions, place people over politics, support our shared mission to deliver security, opportunity, and prosperity for all Americans. Onward. A moderate Democrat, Phillips has said for months he does not think Biden should run for re-election, and CNN previously reported he's eyed his own White House bid. Phillips told CNN Jake Tapper in August that there are ample, well-prepared, competent people with great characters who could challenge Biden in the Democratic primary. His exit from the leadership role comes amid growing scrutiny of the president's age at 80 years old. Oh my God. I didn't even realize that he was 80. I mean, I knew that he was old, but oh my word. 80? Yikes. That's kind of insane. At 80 years old, Biden is the oldest president in American history. If re-elected, he would be 86 when ending his second term. CNN polling conducted by SSRS in the late August found roughly 3/4 of Americans say they're seriously concerned about Biden's age might negatively affect his current level of physical and mental competence. 73. And his ability to serve out another full term, re-elected 76%, with a smaller 68% majority seriously concerned about his ability to understand the next generation's concerns. That stands at 72% among those younger than 65, but just 57% of those 65 or older feel the same. Biden, however, shrugged off concerns about his age as his re-election bid ramps up. The American electorate is going to see a race and they're going to judge whether or not I have or don't have it. I expect them taking a hard look at it. He said during a press conference when pressed on concerns about his age. I take a hard look at it as well. I took a hard look at it before I decided to run, and it feels good. I feel excited about the prospects. So, there you have it. He is not, there are cracks showing up. It's taking a long time for them to show up. And as you may have heard, Newsom and DeSantis are supposed to have a debate. Let's see if I can pull up any information on that, because there are some people that are saying, hey, maybe Newsom should run. Newsom and DeSantis debate. This was from 6 days ago. They're doing this in November. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and California Governor Gavin Newsom will take part in a televised 90-minute debate moderated by Fox News' Sean Hannity on November 30th. The network announced Monday. The debate will air on Hannity's namesake show from Georgia, though a specific location in the key battleground state remains to be determined. I look forward to the opportunity to debate Gavin Newsom on our very different visions for the future of our country, DeSantis said on the X platform formerly known as Twitter. Andrew Romeo DeSantis' campaign spokesman said in a statement that the contrast of California's failure to Florida's success demonstrates that Ron DeSantis is right. Decline is merely a choice. Whether Newsom or Biden is the Democratic nominee in 24, they both offer the same failed imperialist ideology for America that helped us get into this mess. We look forward to putting Ron DeSantis' record of success up against it. Emphasizing they want real debate, not a circus, Newsom's spokesman Nathan Click said in a statement, "We've agreed to the debate, provided there's no cheering section, no hype videos, or any of the other crutches DeSantis requested." As far as I'm concerned, he probably wants them for your benefit, not his. Probably thinks you're the one that needs the hype, not me. The two ideologically opposed governors first agreed to take each other on in early August, but negotiations stalled for weeks over the proposed rules. DeSantis, who is running for the Republican nomination for president, often takes aim at Newsom on the campaign trail, painting California as a failed liberal antithesis to his home state, Florida. 3 days after he accepted the invitation to debate, DeSantis played his singing to a crowd at a campaign event in Grinnell, Iowa. One, Biden's agenda is ultimately just trying to take the California agenda nationwide. Anyways, California leftism is kind of how the Democratic Party operates, he said, claiming that Biden may not be the candidate and that Newsom may instead become the Democratic nominee. Newsom is widely talked about as a potential presidential candidate, but has shown rumors that he would launch a primary challenge against President Joe Biden. President Biden is going around. We're looking forward to getting him reelected, Newsom told Chad Talk in an interview on NBC's Meet the Press, emphasizing that Vice President Kamala Harris is naturally Biden's successor. DeSantis is also in California this week for another campaign confrontation, the second GOP primary debate Wednesday from the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library in Simi Valley, California. Well, the thing of it is that I don't understand bothering to debate DeSantis if he's not running. So I don't really get it. I'm wondering how old Gavin Newsom is, because I can't imagine that he's wanting to wait until Kamala Harris has had her chance at the presidency before he announces his campaign. So, I don't know. Interesting things may be happening. Alright, well, that's all I have for now. Hope you enjoy watching that rally. I hope people will wake up and realize that in many ways, Vivek is the better choice than even DeSantis. And that really, even though he doesn't want it to be the VP for Trump, Ramaswamy may be one of his best options for VP. Because Ramaswamy can tell him, this is how we get it done. I don't know if Trump really has a vision for how to get it done. And unfortunately, he does any kind of interviews, and 90% of everything that he says is it's just about his court cases. You don't really hear what his plans are. But by the look of the polls, people don't fucking care. They're saying, you've come for the king and we're gonna support the king because this is all political when you're doing it because you're afraid of him. And it is all political. But I don't know. Oh, we gotta talk about Matt Gaetz. I was forgetting about Matt Gaetz. Hold on here. And I just remembered that because of a tweet I saw. So, he is apparently planning on trying to get, you've probably heard by now, McCarthy replaced. So here's from the Washington Post. House prepares for next hurdle, efforts to oust McCarthy as Speaker. Now, there are some people that are trying to say that people are done with Matt Gaetz. That they're upset with him, but we'll get to that in a moment. Let's read this. The decision was always going to be his. I'm wondering if you all would be able to hear this.
This news story was written by Mariana Sotomayor, Lee and Caldwell, and Mariana Alfaro. House prepares for next hurdle, efforts to oust McCarthy as Speaker. Representative Matt Gaetz says he is prepared to force repeated votes on removing Kevin McCarthy as House Speaker after he worked with Democrats on a stopgap funding measure. The decision was always going to be his. With a Democratic-led Senate ready to fund the government in a bipartisan fashion and a Democratic president in the White House, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, Republican, California, would ultimately have to make the determinative choice about whether to avert a government shutdown. Having exhausted every option to fund the government with just conservative votes, McCarthy sided with Republicans who suggested he skirt a procedural hurdle that obstructionists have previously used against the conference and propose a bill that would appease Democrats enough to keep the government running. That proposal became law. But it may come with a price, his job. Representative Matt Gaetz, Republican, Florida, said Sunday that he is determined to try to oust McCarthy from his leadership position after McCarthy passed a stopgap measure to fund the government with Democratic support. Gaetz told CNN's State of the Union that he plans to introduce a measure to remove McCarthy sometime this week, marking a dramatic escalation of the long-simmering tensions between the men. Once he does so, the House will have 48 hours to vote on the matter. I think we need to rip off the Band-Aid. I think we need to move on with new leadership that can be.
This article is leading out one important thing. And that's that apparently, after it was passed, it came out that McCarthy went to the Democratic leadership and made a promise that he would put forward a separate funding bill for Ukraine. This 45-day thing that they passed didn't include funding with Ukraine. And so Matt Gaetz is ticked that he went around them and did all this.
Be trustworthy, Gaetz said. Hard-right obstructionists in the House GOP have made clear for weeks that they would try to oust McCarthy if he relied on Democrats to pass any funding legislation. Under the move Gaetz is planning, called a motion to vacate, a single person can force the House to consider removing the Speaker. Such a motion has never succeeded before. On multiple Sunday show appearances, Gaetz accused McCarthy of lying during the negotiations over the stopgap government funding talks, and of lying to the Republican conference in January during the lengthy speakership fight that saw him going through 15 rounds of House votes before being elected Speaker. Look, the one thing everybody has in common is that nobody trusts Kevin McCarthy, Gaetz told CNN. He lied to Biden, he lied to House conservatives. He had appropriators marking to a different number altogether. McCarthy, Gates said, broke a promise made to hard-right conservatives during the speakership fight that the chamber would move to pass individual spending bills rather than bundling them all together. Gates also said McCarthy promised the conference 72 hours to read the bill, and that the budget would return to pre-COVID spending levels. McCarthy and Republicans have passed 4 appropriation bills thus far and plan to pass the remaining 8 this month. While McCarthy did not give his conference 72 hours to review and vote on the stopgap bill to keep the government funded, his leadership team has followed that rule on a majority of bills passed this year. There is almost no promise he hasn't violated, Gates told ABC News this week. On Sunday morning, McCarthy was defiant when asked about Gates's potential effort to remove him from his seat. "I'll survive. This is personal with Matt," he told CBS News' Face the Nation. "If he's upset because he tried to push us in a shutdown, and I made sure government didn't shut down, then let's have that fight." Despite McCarthy's confidence, however, in interviews over the past week, a handful of Republicans indicated an openness to Gates's move. On Saturday night, both the House and Senate passed a continuing resolution that keeps the government funded through November 17 and includes disaster relief funds, an extension of a federal flood insurance program and reauthorization of the Federal Aviation Administration, but did not include additional aid for Ukraine. Gates was one of 6 Republicans who never supported McCarthy in his fight to take the Speaker's gavel in January, at the beginning of the new congressional term. Those 6 members eventually voted present in the 15th round of voting, lowering the threshold needed for McCarthy's victory. But those Republicans and others on the far right have successfully blockaded efforts by the majority of House Republicans who have tried to govern under the constitutional constraints of having to pass bills with a Democratic majority Senate and Democratic president. On Sunday, some of those far-right Republicans appeared to welcome Gates's approach. Representative Byron Donalds, Republican, Florida, a member of the ultra-conservative House Freedom Caucus, told Fox News that it was clear McCarthy is in trouble. Asked how he would vote on a motion to vacate, Donalds said, "I got to really think about that. There are a lot of trust issues in my chamber right now," he said. Other Republicans who are critical of McCarthy's leadership left the Capitol on Saturday night, declining to say how they would vote when Gates brings up the motion, but hinted that they have given it some thought. "I vote with my conscience," Representative Tim Burchett, Republican, Tennessee, said in an interview. "I'm over it. We're going to lose our country." Speaking to ABC News, Gates said he plans to file his motion to vacate over and over. "I might not have him the first time, but I might have him before the 15th ballot," he said. "I will continue to pursue this objective." Gates, however, said he did not have a replacement for McCarthy in mind. A majority of the GOP conference still staunchly supports McCarthy and would vote to keep him as their speaker. Representative Jason T. Smith, Republican, Missouri, told Fox News' Sunday Morning Futures host Maria Bartiromo on Sunday that Gates would need more than 200 Democrats to join him to remove McCarthy because more than 200 Republicans are 100% behind Speaker McCarthy. And Representative Michael Lawler, Republican, New York, one of the most vulnerable Republicans in the conference, told This Week that Gates's decision is a diatribe of delusional thinking. Lawler noted that while Gates is complaining about how slowly the House has moved to advance appropriations bills, the Florida Republican himself is one of the reasons the process has been so drawn out. By putting this motion to vacate on the floor, you know what Matt Gaetz is going to do? He's going to delay the ability to complete that work over the next 45 days, Lawler said. And just like he and some of my colleagues did during the past 3 weeks, they delayed the process by voting down the rules, violating our conference rules. They delayed the process by refusing to come to an agreement within the conference. With Republicans holding such a narrow majority in the House, if more than 5 hardliners vote in favor of deposing McCarthy, Republicans will need Democrats to help overcome that margin. But their help, if it is even given, would come at a significant price. Knowing the role they play in this scenario, House Democrats are beginning to discuss how they would handle a potential challenge to McCarthy's speakership, as their participation, or lack thereof, will determine whether he remains as Speaker of the House. Multiple people familiar with the private conversations have said that no plan is final and that McCarthy's own last-minute scramble to force consideration of a clean short-term spending bill that averted a government shutdown angered many Democrats. Gates said he expects Democrats to protect McCarthy. If at this time next week, Kevin McCarthy is still Speaker of the House, it will be because the Democrats bailed them out and he can be their Speaker, not mine, Gates said on This Week. The number 2 person in the House Democratic Caucus, Representative Catherine M. Clark, Massachusetts, told members in a note Sunday to be ready for a motion to oust McCarthy as Speaker at any time, including Monday. She did not indicate any preference in how to vote, adding that we will have a caucus-wide discussion on how to address the motion to best meet the needs of the American people. Some moderate Democrats signaled that they might help McCarthy because they distrust Gates more. Every time we all work together, he loses his mind, Representative Greg Landsman, Democrat, Ohio, said in a statement. He doesn't want the center-left and center-right to work together because he has to be the center of attention. When we do, he creates chaos to grab attention back. Matt Gaetz has no interest in governing. This is all about TV appearances for him. There is, however, little love lost for McCarthy, whom Democrats loathe and regard as untrustworthy. It would be an extremely high bar complete with concessions that he, at a bare minimum, change how he is running the House. Before we save his A, what do we get? One Democratic lawmaker said. We're not going to provide the votes just because we're just nice guys. However, some Democrats welcomed the idea of helping Gaetz oust McCarthy. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Democrat, New York, one of the prominent progressives in the House, said she would absolutely vote to end his speakership. I think Kevin McCarthy is a very weak speaker, she told CNN on Sunday. He clearly has lost control of his caucus. It's not up to Democrats to save Republicans from themselves. Representative Ann Custer, Democrat, New Hampshire, chair of the New Democrat Coalition, a large caucus made up of pragmatic Democrats, said in an interview that the deep distrust for McCarthy in the caucus, the legislative record of his conference, and the baseless impeachment are reasons it would be a big lift for any House Democrat to vote to save him. Separately, Representative Nancy Pelosi, Democrat, California, McCarthy's predecessor as House Speaker, said Gaetz's move against McCarthy is just not about the budget, it's about a values debate. You're wasting your time on that guy because he has no sway in the House of Representatives except to get on TV and to raise money on the internet, Pelosi said Sunday on CNN. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat, New York, has built a significant amount of trust and goodwill among his fellow Democrats and he is unlikely to use that political capital to save McCarthy, say multiple people close to the situation. Any ask Jeffries makes of his party members to salvage McCarthy's speakership would have to be viewed as a significant win by Democrats. Some of the demands being floated among Democrats include funding the government at levels previously agreed to by McCarthy and President Biden, the reallocation of the number of Democrats compared to Republicans on committees, and a more equal percentage of earmarks in appropriations bills. Democrats say they have received a significantly lower percentage of earmarks than Republicans. More drastic concessions could mean asking McCarthy to skirt hardline conservatives in his conference and form a coalition government where McCarthy governs to the center. But few Democrats trust that McCarthy would stand by any commitments he pledges. And some Democrats also worry that more chaos would ensue if McCarthy is removed as Speaker. They also fret that a potential replacement could be worse than McCarthy, or there could be no replacement at all. Democrats don't intend to telegraph their vote on a motion to vacate, to give Jeffries the best negotiating position, said one House Democrat, who spoke on the condition of anonymity to openly discuss internal dynamics. One idea that has been widely discussed among Democrats is a motion to table the provision under consideration, which would prevent them from having to play a direct role in voting for or against McCarthy for Speaker. Another possibility is that a group of institutionalist Democrats could vote present, which would lower the 218 vote threshold needed to pass any measure through a majority. Such a move would allow Republicans to determine McCarthy's fate within their ranks. Some Republicans expect several Democrats to vote present out of goodwill, after McCarthy changed his weeks-long posture of passing only conservative bills through his ranks and introduced the short-term funding bill that passed Saturday. He's being punished for putting a bipartisan bill on the floor to keep our government open, Representative Brian Fitzpatrick, Republican, Pennsylvania, said in an interview Saturday. So you either believe that that activity should be rewarded or punished. Democrats say their support is not guaranteed, and McCarthy would need to formally ask their caucus for help. Even moderate Democrats who are most likely to cross the aisle say they would not vote present unless McCarthy makes a direct request for help and pledges to make the House run in a more bipartisan fashion. If not, they're going to vote him out, said one Democratic aide who is familiar with how moderates are thinking. On Sunday, after delivering remarks marking the passage of the continuing resolution, Biden avoided questions over whether Democrats should save McCarthy if Gaetz pushes a motion to vacate. The president simply said he hopes this experience for the Speaker has been one of personal revelation. I'm not being facetious, he added. McCarthy's ultimate decision to move past trying to appease hardliners and listen to a pragmatic set of Republicans who suggested foregoing their colleagues' votes to instead rely on Democrats to fund the government was seen by some Republicans and Democrats as one way that the House could function moving forward. Representative Kelly Armstrong, Republican, South Dakota, warned his fellow Republicans not to lose sight of what they've been working toward. He said that if McCarthy is ousted, that would eat up valuable time trying to fund the government for the entire year. We can either start Monday to pass a single subject appropriations bill and secure the border, or we can start the circus, Armstrong said Saturday. Laura Riley and Patrick Marley contributed to this report.
Okay, well, there you have that. Now, my dad sent me something that is interesting. And it's really hard to say whether or not this is true. Because, it's one of those things that I don't think anybody went on the record as saying that this was true about Gates. So it's interesting that it's all just kind of speculation. But the possibility that they could be trying to get rid of Gates because they're upset with what he's doing. House members seek to expel Gates amid renewed threats to vacate House Speaker McCarthy. I don't see how they could do this. What has he done that's illegal? How is it against any rules to want to oust him? So I'm a little confused about that. House members are preparing a motion to expel Representative Matt Gaetz, Republican of Florida, amid renewed threat to pursue a motion to vacate House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. The House Republicans will seek to expel Gaetz if the Ethics Committee report comes back with findings of guilt. See, so I guess he's under some sort of investigation? Well, if he's under investigation for something and he comes back as guilty, then, I mean, fine. One member told Fox News that the report is mostly written but does not know what it contains, yet following threats to vacate McCarthy, a member said of Gates, "No one can stand him at this point, a smart guy without morals." So apparently there is some kind of ethics investigation that he's on. I don't remember anything about what the ethics is. So I'm going to have to look into that. One member told Fox News the report is mostly written, blah, blah, blah. It takes 2/3 vote to expel, and Republicans are treading on thin ice with the majority. The House is down to 433 members. It's unclear where things would stand with federally indicted Rep. George Santos. You see, that's the thing. They can't really afford. They should be wanting to kick him out, but yet they haven't. So that's why I have questions about this, and nobody's going on record. It's all anonymous sources. This is a very weird thing for Fox News to do. Very strange. During an appearance on CNN Sunday morning, Gates said he planned to file a motion to vacate against Speaker McCarthy this week. "I think we need to rip off the Band-Aid. I think we need to move on with new leadership that can be trustworthy. Look, the one thing everybody has in common is nobody trusts Kevin McCarthy. He lied to Biden. He lied to House conservatives. Kevin McCarthy's goal was to make multiple contrary promises to lay everything back up against shutdown politics, and at the end of the day, blow past spending guardrails. He had agreed." In response to the motion to vacate, McCarthy said, "I'll survive. This is personal with Matt. Let's get it over. Let's start going." This isn't personal, Jake. This is about spending. This is about the deal Kevin McCarthy made. If Kevin McCarthy didn't want to keep the deal to return to pre-COVID spending, if he wanted to keep the deal to have single set of spending bills, not for government spending, all up and down at once, they shouldn't have made that deal. So it's about keeping Kevin McCarthy to his word. It's not about any personal animus. Okay, so here we have what the The House Ethics Committee has been investigated since 2021 on allegations including fighting Hannah's finance violations, as well as claims of taking bribes and drugs. Accusations the Congressman has vehemently denied. Gates also denies allegations leaked from a Justice Department sex trafficking probe said to have involved an underage girl. But at this point, nobody in the Justice Department has bothered to charge him with anything. So, as stated to Fox News earlier this year, Gates' office confirmed that the Department of Justice confirmed to Congressman Gates' attorney that their investigation is concluded and that he will not be charged with any crimes. Well, there you go. So, if that's true, and the Department of Justice has no intention of charging him with anything, though they could change their at any time, then why would the House Ethics Committee come back with something different? That's weird and highly sus. And this just goes on to explain what is needed to oust him. So I just find it really... They could change their time. They could change their mind at any time and be like, "Yeah, we're charging the guy." But to my knowledge, they aren't intending to do that. So interesting. All right, so okay, we are officially done. We're on an hour and a half. I'm yawning. Ugh. I hope you will turn in to Rakil's Twitch tonight, because he apparently is supposed to be doing a movie, and we have not had movie nights in a while. So. Alright, so God bless you all. Remember, the world may seem vast and wide, and it may feel small, but remember, it takes all of us working together to make the universe that we want it to be. And hopefully that universe will include Trump being president again. Alright, so God bless America. You have a wonderful day.